What's up, guys? Four-wheeler doctor back again. Today we're going to be working on about a 98 or so model 450 Foreman. This is one of the full-time four-wheel drive bikes, and we're going to be putting a disc brake kit on the front of it. So this is a SuperAtv kit. I've used a few different ones. This is actually the first time I've ever used a SuperAtv, but this looks like it's pretty much the same as most of the other ones I've done. We're going to go ahead and start taking it apart a little bit here. Pull both the front tires off and loosen both of the axle nuts, because I think we're going to end up having to pop the wheel studs out. That's where we usually have to do these. And I'll get that done and cut the camera back on in a sec. I'll also probably open the box up and lay everything out to show you what you get. Alright guys, these are all the parts. Kind of got them separated out here. Your caliper, your bracket to hold your caliper. This is a spacer that goes on the brake rotor. Then it comes with some grade 8 bolts. These will actually be your studs, and some more spacers and bolts for to hold your caliper bracket on. There's also a couple brackets. These are to move your brake lines. So we'll go ahead and get started on it. Got the tires off. Now, first step you're going to do is, like I said before, take the axle nut out, pull that cotter pin out, and slide your whole brake drum and rotor off, or hub off if you can. So we're going to get these axle nuts off both sides, and then we'll get that pulled apart. I'll cut the camera back on once we get that done. What our whole thing here is to get this rotor off, or get this drum off, and we're going to knock these studs out, because you do have to use that the hub there again. So we're going to get that tore down. I'll cut the camera back on, let you see what it looks like. Alright guys, we got the axle nut off here. This thing's still pretty tough to come off. And these brakes work halfway decent on here. What you have to do in a lot of cases is back the tension off on your brake adjuster. I'm going to still try to get this drum off without doing that. There's two 8mm bolts here that you can remove. It will help the drum come off if it will here. Take a hammer, tap on the edge of it. What I like to do is try to pull one side and tap the other side and get it to come off. Take some tension off of this, I believe, because it's not going to come off like this. So I'm going to spin this thing around till I get to adjuster, and the little arrow that is shown on the adjuster, I'm going to spin it the other direction to back the shoes down, because I think the shoes are actually what's holding this the drum on there. So let me spin this around, we'll get it to the adjuster, and then since this is a four-wheel drive bike, a little tough to spin. Sometimes you can take and turn it because of limited slip, but it works a lot easier if you just roll the whole bike and it'll spin the drum for you. So let me get the screwdriver and we'll get that backed off. Alright guys, so I just backed this adjuster down right here. You can see the arrow says turn to the left. Spun it back to the right, and that was enough just to let the brake drum slide off. And this is the part we're really wanting to get to. We do have to reuse that. Alright, the next thing we need to do is to take this back plate off. There's 4 12mm bolts that hold it in, and we'll also have to remove the brake line here that hooks into this wheel cylinder. So we're going to pull those 12s off, and then makes it a little easier to get to the wheel cylinder bolt once you do that. So I'm going to pull that plate out, and we'll take the brake line off. I'll cut the camera back on once we get it all loosened up. Alright, this is what you got when you take those 4 12mm bolts out. The next one you need to take out is this brake line. It's also a 12mm, and in this case the vent line is in the way. Don't really matter about that at this point, because we're not going to reuse those. So you just pull that out. It's a banjo bolt, and it comes with 2 washers. I just hold on to this stuff because a lot of times I'll reuse this, because these wheel cylinders and all this actually work. This is going to leak out some fluid, so ideally you'd put a pan under it, but I don't have one right here, so we're not going to use it. I'm also going to pop this little clip off here just to get it out of the way, because we won't need it. Like I said before, we won't need these vent lines. And I don't know if you noticed or not, but this ball joint's bad on this thing. We'll have to put that on the repair list as well. So that's what we got. Now we need to start putting this back together with the new studs and the rotor and all that. I found the easiest way to do this is if you don't really care about these studs, don't look at reusing them. You can just take and beat them out with a hammer. I am going to keep them because I may use them for something else. I will stick the nut on there like this, run it down till you flush with the end of your stud. What I like to do is just stick them in a vise to where the vise is just barely bigger than the end of the stud there. Take and hit it with a hammer and it'll pop right out. So I'm gonna go pop all 8 of these out, and then we'll get ready to put the new stuff back on. Alright guys, this is what we got after we pressed the studs out. I ended up using my press because it was a little easier than beating them out with a hammer, but the hammer option does work. I did that on the first one and decided not to do it on the rest. So now what we're going to do is start putting the brake rotor together. I don't really know if it matters or not, but this thing is cross drilled, and the rotation, this would be on the right side, so that's what we're going to do first. What you do here is put these long 8mm bolts, I'm sorry, grade 8 bolts, not 8mm, grade 8 bolts in here like this. Next thing you put in is 4 of these spacers, just like that. And hopefully I've got this thing going in the right direction. So like that. And then we're going to put our factory hub back on, fish these bolts through there. You wind up with it like that. And then this is pretty much just a big nut. These studs or bolts will screw into this spacer. This is one of them deals where it takes about 4 hands to get it done. So you just start those in. I'm gonna run them in with my cordless impact, but run them in like that, get them started. And so this, what we'll end up with is this will be pulled up here. These bolts will stick out here, and that's actually what you attach to the wheel to. So let me get these done for both sides, and we'll cut the camera back on when we get ready to put our bracket on. Alright guys, we got the rotor assembly put together here. Spacer, your nuts or your bolts run all the way through, and then they tighten down onto this plate, and it centers up right around that lip that's on your factory rotor. Alright, next thing we're going to do is put the bracket on. The way it goes on there is the ears go toward the back, just slides over like that right there, and it comes with these tapered bolts, I'm sorry, and I don't think it recommends it in the instructions, but I am going to put some Loctite on these just to make sure they don't back out, because that would really mess some stuff up. Those are Allen head bolts, so not that bolt. We're going to put all 4 of these on, do it on both sides, and then we'll be ready to slide our rotor on and hook the brakes up and bleed the thing, and we'll be about done. So this is a pretty easy install, and I know it's kind of expensive compared to changing out brake pads, but guys, I'm going to go ahead and tell you there's no comparison to how good these things work compared to your factory stuff. I ran these for years on my 450 Foreman, by about like this, but it was in and out 4-wheel drive, and it worked perfect. Alright, so let me get these tightened up, and we'll cut the camera back on right before we put the rotor on this thing. Alright guys, we got this bracket tightened up. Now it's time to put the rotor on. Pretty simple, just slides on there. You line your splines up on your axle, and it goes right on. We'll stick the axle nut back on here and the cotter pin and tighten that up, and then we'll be ready to hook the caliper on next. And let me get these tightened up, cut the camera back on in a sec. Alright guys, I'm pretty sure the way this rotor is going to bolt up in here, that this brake line, if you kept it in that original bracket, would be too tight. So we're going to end up using this supplied little bracket here, bolts on to this like here, and then the brake line hooks to this top bolt. It comes with our top hole. It comes with a bolt and a nut, and you just use your factory nut to put it back on here, and that'll get your brake line up a little higher, so that it'll clear your tie rod in, so it will hook into your caliper correctly. And so now next thing we need to do is put the caliper on. What you want to do on these, make sure you install it. I think they were supposed to be marked left and right, or at least that's what the instructions said, but these aren't. So what you want to do is just make sure your bleed screw faces to the top, because if you put it toward the bottom, it's real tough to get all the air out of the caliper. So this is how it goes here with the bleed screw. See if I can flip this around. Bleed screw toward the top, and then your brake line will hook in right there below it. And it comes with 2 8mm bolts and lock washers to put that in. So let me get those put in, then we'll hook the brake line up. Alright guys, so I got the banjo bolt tightened up back here on the brake line, and this is the little bracket that was supplied for this the brake line there. And what you want to look here is to make sure this thing doesn't have a whole lot of pressure on that tie rod end. It just barely touches it when it's at full lock, and naturally doesn't touch it when you go the other direction. So that's what you're wanting. I'm gonna go do the other side, and then we will look at bleeding these things. Alright guys, this is the finished product. We're gonna bleed these brakes out. This is what I use to bleed them. This is a little bit of a little kind of ghetto setup I got here. Just a water bottle with a tube stuck down in it. You stick this on your bleed screw, pump your brakes up, and wait until you get just solid fluid out of here, no air in it. So that's what we're going to do now. I'll cut it back on once I get everything rigged up, just to show you how I work it. Alright guys, here's what you do. Just make sure your brake master cylinder's full there. Pump this brake lever a couple times. Hold that down. And then come down here to your bleed screw and pop your bleed screw open and watch to see what fluid comes out. Actually, we don't have a whole lot of air in here. It looks like that's pretty much straight fluid there. So you do this just a couple times and make sure you get all your air out of your lines, and that should be it. Then you bolt your tires up just as you normally would. Your regular lug nuts will fit right on here, and check to make sure your rim doesn't get close to rubbing these, and you can go ahead and take these vent lines off because you don't need those anymore. And that's pretty much it. So you guys check my other videos out, like, subscribe, and have a good day.